Next, we have a presentation from Ben O'Mara, Kirsten Harley, Matthew Harrison, and Natasha Dwyer on what we have learned about making video games more enjoyable to play for people living with MND.
Changing the game for people living with MND, a scoping review exploring inclusive gaming.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining our session. Today we're going to begin by talking about why this project and share some of our stories. Then we're going to talk about the aims of our scope and review, and then we're going to share some of the key results and findings that we've gathered through this process.
Years ago, I was a busy, active academic and mum. I swam and went to the gym between lectures, walked my 6-year-old daughter Kimmy to school, and enjoyed cooking and catching up with friends for coffee. When I had time, I chilled out by playing a variety of puzzle games on my iPad or computer, and my mum, sisters, and I enjoyed connecting by playing online Scrabble. During the year, my legs started cramping, then tripping and falling, which I managed to ignore until I fell 3 times during a short walk to a conference dinner. I saw my GP and she referred me to a neurologist for tests. The 7th of January 2013 is the day our lives were upended as my husband, Denzel, and I held hands in the neurologist's office, and she gave us the devastating news that I have motor neuron disease. The neurologist explained that death of the motor neurons causes our muscles to weaken and shrink, and we progressively lose the ability to move, speak, swallow, and breathe. The pace and order of change vary widely, but typically people die within 2 to 3 years. The clinic nurse eloquently described the edge of a disease. It has break my strong, active body, so that now I can only move my face, can barely swallow, and can't speak or breathe. Tubes connect a ventilator and feeding machine to my curious cyborg body, and a team of carers provides round-the-clock care to keep me alive. I have always enjoyed playing games. But gaming has become more valuable to me as MND has taken many of the activities I previously enjoyed as well as control over much of my life. Both how and what I play has changed with my changing body. As my arms grew weaker, I needed armrests cradling my arms to use a computer keyboard, and found it easier to manipulate an iPad on my lap. With increasing difficulty moving my hands, I transitioned to a smaller tablet, and then phone, and abandoned games which required speed. Finally, I became unable to even tap or swipe the screen. For a while, I settled on giving suggestions as my husband and young daughter created fabulous worlds in Minecraft. For I shared the fun problem solving and appreciated the gorgeous design in a hands-free way, as our family bonded during collective games of Monument Valley. I now use a neural node to operate my iPhone. Its electrodes are attached to the skin over a muscle and pick up the electrical signal my brain sends when I try to move. The signals are sent to my iPhone by Bluetooth and use the phone's inbuilt switch control function, so I can choose and use apps, including games, as well as typing text to speak. It's remarkable life-transforming technology. Initially, I activated the neural node with tiny thumb twitches. Now, being able to play games by wiggling my eyebrows is my superpower. I know anecdotally that others in the MND community appreciate the fun that video games can provide. It has been great working with Ben, Matt, and Tash to map out what the research tells us about how to make video games more inclusive for the MND community.
Hi everyone, I'm Ben O'Mara. I'm the Information Resources Manager at Motor Neuron Disease Australia and an Adjunct Fellow in the Centre for Social Impact at the University of New South Wales. I hope that by working on this scoping review, we can find ways to make daily life not just easier for people living with MND, but also more enjoyable, and through fun and creative approaches to games development.
Hi, my name's Dr. Natasha Dwyer. I work for Victoria University, Australia, and I'm super excited to be involved in this project because we're exploring how technology, everyday technology that people might already have, to be able to assist in new ways.
Hello, my name's Dr. Matthew Harrison, and I'm a senior lecturer and researcher in learning intervention at the Melbourne Graduate School of Education. I'm really excited about this project because I get to combine my love of inclusive gaming with research working with people with lived experiences of MND. We're going to do something a bit different today and share our details before we share the findings of our scoping review. The reason for that is we want people who use AAC devices, such as Kirsten, to be able to ask and answer questions as part of this presentation. So we've shared our Twitter handles here. So please, if you have a question, reach out to us while the rest of the video is playing. And at the end, we'll hopefully be able to answer those questions live or answer them later in the afternoon. We just gave you a bit of time to write those down. It hasn't frozen.
What is a scoping review? A mapping of past studies, evaluations, and other forms of evidence from research and practice that have looked at what helps make video games more fun and easier to play for people living with MND.
So what did we review? Well, we looked at studies from across the world, but we only looked at studies that were conducted in English and published between 2011 and July 2021. We've also started the process of looking at grey literature, which is drawn from Australia, New Zealand, UK, the US and Canada. So grey literature includes things like any kinds of reports, evaluations, communication materials, or other documents that might appear on the websites of peak bodies, non-profits or government agencies. So we found 39 relevant studies in the health literature, and the studies were mostly conducted in the US, in multiple countries, and mostly Western Europe, US, UK, and or East Asia, Canada and Germany. The studies included people living with MND, ALS, and others dealing with conditions like cerebral palsy, paralysis and stroke, as well as their carers, family and loved ones, and clinicians, allied health professionals, robotics engineers, and assistive equipment and technology specialists, game developers and programs. Most of the studies were conducted in universities, hospitals and clinics, with a couple taking place in people's homes. A small number of studies focused on just people living with MND, and many focused on people living with MND, ALS, and or others with similar forms of motor impairment and movement issues. And similarly, a small number of studies focused just on digital games, and most studies focus on technology that could be used to play games. Most studies focus on interface technology, so brain-computer interfaces and or eye tracking devices, or were more general forms of research into assistive and communication technology, ethics in technology, and or policy and programs for technology. Our narrative charting of these studies is still underway, but would like to report on general outcomes of the studies included so far. Over half of the studies reported that BCIs, touchscreens, and or eye gaze devices enabled interaction with computers and other technology, including to play games, but their use was also limited. And about 1/4 of the studies found that people living with MND/ALS and those with similar motor impairment issues have expressed preferences and concerns for how BCIs and other forms of technology, including technology used for games, are researched and developed. And a smaller group of studies found that specific programs or projects have supported free or affordable access to assistive technology, computers, and other devices that can be used with games. So we've identified very clear areas of focus for making games easy to play with people living with MND, but these areas also suggest major gaps and limitations too.
What do these studies tell us? Common characteristics of the studies included were user-driven approaches, technology like BCI, eye tracking, head-mounted display, auditory, keyboard, tablet. Games that were considered enjoyable, fun and easy to play by the research team writing the paper, but as my colleague Kirsten points out, perhaps not from the perspective of the person playing the game. And support for communication and motor disability, fatigue, carer support, decision-making, change and disease progression. So what type of games? Turn-based and time-sensitive, and often the games used in the studies were what we call dead boring. So old-fashioned games like tic-tac-toe, when there's a lot more innovative options available to people now.
Most studies also demonstrate a sensitivity to the needs of people living with MND and or those with motor impairment. The evidence suggested there was major gaps in comprehensive qualitative research involving people living with MND and their experiences of video games. So while the researchers were mindful of the needs, there wasn't much emphasis on the voices of those who the researchers were trying to help. And the links between the policy and the programs, such as government-funded support for access to technology, was also another major gap that we identified through this process. The evidence suggests that playing games can reduce boredom, improve quality of life, and connect with family and friends. And that's really what this project's about, is about gaming for joy and social connection, rather than therapy. So what does this mean for the future of research, development, and practice? Well, we want to have a focus on fun. We want a user-centered perspective that prioritizes fun rather than therapy. Of course, therapy is important, but so too is fun and connection with family and loved ones. We want to have identify future research areas to explore, including how we can adapt domestic technology and games for use by people living with MND. We want to gain further insights from the social sciences and the grey literature, and this is a process that we're continuing to develop right now. And finally, we want an interdisciplinary approach, and that represents our team who come from a number of fields, and that include game studies, health, technology, and the social sciences. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please make sure you reach out. We thought there was going to be a session after lunch, so we thought you'd probably want something a bit more fun. Hashtag, if it's a presentation about fun, you want to have some game themes. We're all here. And Ben's joined by our honorary fifth member of the team, Giddy.
Okay, there's going to be no questions. We're just going to look at oh, baby. All right, there have to be questions from the audience or online.
I did bring my phone in case there's something on Twitter as well.
Okay.
But
I have a question.
please.
So at our clinic, we also at times see adults with muscular dystrophies. So these are usually young guys who are in their 20s or 30s. I learned most of my adaptive gaming things that I pass on from them. Have you worked with that population at all?
Well, my area is actually looking particularly with people who are autistic and gaming. Mm-hmm. But Ben and Kirsten might be best placed to answer that question. Ben, do you have a free hand? I sorry, you're on mute.
That's the first you're on mute we've had this
Oh.
session.
You've done well. Get this far. Oh, we don't
Yeah.
have volume on Ben. That's all right.
Matt, that's okay. Ben can't talk.
Oh.
Well, he might. Or maybe you can type it in the chat as well. There's a question way in the back while we work on the technical.
This isn't a question as much as a comment. We have a patient in our clinic who's 25. Oh, can you hear me again? Oh, thanks. We have a patient in our clinic who's 25 years old and was very depressed, and the family discovered something called the quad stick. Has anybody used that? He was an avid video game player, could not play them, and suddenly he's playing with people all over the world.
Yeah, I think the technology was quad stick. Was that right? Yeah. Yes, I have. I've heard about this through Able Gamers. I don't know if you've heard of that charity. There's a wonderful organisation that looks at how we can adapt and remove barriers to gameplay. And this is something that I work with a lot in my field as well. It's how we can actually use these different technologies to be able to access the games that everyone's playing. So rather than having separate games, or as Natasha said in the video, games have been simplified. We want to play games. People want to play the games they used to play, or games that their friends are playing. So it's really, technology like the quad stick's really key to that.
Exactly, right. They don't want those boring games.
No.
I
do love
you must
tic-tac-toe,
have, though, older women who would like to continue to play solitaire.
We don't make a differentiation between hardcore games and casual games. I personally love solitaire as well.
Hey, is my audio on?
Oh, we can hear Tash. That's good.
We can hear you now.
It's working.
Hello. Nice haircut, Matt. I thought I'd hop in on the solitaire question as well, as a solitaire fan. But the games that we found that are being used as a point of study, and my colleagues might want to hop in on this, are more along the tic-tac-toe type of range. But yeah, we're all for options of what people, maybe tic-tac-toe makes people happy, fine. We're interested in how to expand options and make use of the excellent technology affordances that are there.
Yeah, and I thought seeing the Swirtle being played was fantastic. Very timely as well.
It's very Kirsten.
Oh, over here, online question.
Yes, it is. This is from Roderick, a person with ALS. I used to make items for an old game, Zoo Tycoon. Would it be possible to adapt that game, a pixel-based animation still available, and the online user-made items are still available?
We think, yeah, and Ben, I think your technology is working now as well, but we're hoping to be able to have people be able to play all sorts of games. We know the research says that games that are turn-based, and Zoo Tycoon is a slower game, so it is easier to find compatible technologies like eye gaze to work with. So that should be very possible. And was that Roger, sorry? Roderick, so if you want to email, we can have a look at that.
Can you hear me, Matt?
Yes.
Yes. Spencer.
Wonderful. Sorry, folks. I've had a number of technological challenges and a baby boy who insists on being heard. So I appreciate your flexibility and patience. Just to tack on to what Matt was saying, and I think, yes, the potential to adapt that game that was mentioned is definitely there. And our intention with this scoping review is to try and establish, as we explain, an evidence base around this. And what that evidence base has shown is that turn-based games that don't require a lot of time and effort with movement, and whether it's simply moving things on the screen versus moving things physically. One of the key next steps for our work now that we've begun to bring this evidence base together is we'd like to work closely with game developers and people living with MND who are interested in games and making them easier to play. And a key part of that is, as we said, turn-based games or any games which require much less effort physically and in other ways to play. And as part of that process, the sorts of games we've mentioned here today, they'll be part of those conversations that we have, hopefully, if we can win funding in order to build on this work. So we would try and work with developers to look at games like that, the one that was just mentioned, and others to see what is possible.
And do you apply for like quality of life grants to try and do some of that funding?
Yeah, and through some of the game development funds available as well. I think the theme from all three speakers this afternoon was really the importance of listening. So it's what do you want to play? It's not us saying this is what you have to play. It's like, what do you want to play? And we will try to work with you to figure out how we can remove the barriers.
That's fantastic. All right, one last question because it's Marcella. She should just keep a microphone. And Felipe.
It's a competition, I'm telling you.
It's a Colombian competition.
Have you thought about implementing this to VR, virtual reality?
Yeah, there was definitely some research. I'll just give my colleagues a chance to answer if they want to first.
I'd like to hop in quickly. I hope I'm not talking over Ben and Kirsten. We did find a point in the grey literature which was about anxieties around VR as far as putting on and not taking on and off the headset. And somebody had a very interesting quote, which was, what if the house burns down? VR, I think, we need to explore the potential of that form further. And VR always seems to be this space of, is it going to be really good or if it not? And it always seems to lurk in that twilight. And I'd also like to quickly hop back, if that's okay, to question one about muscular dystrophy. And we haven't had a chance to investigate what we could learn from that field. And we didn't find much in our literature review referring to that. Matt, Kirsten and Ben might disagree with me. But we are finding indications in the grey literature of people talking about the practicalities of how do we get these things to work. So would like to know more about that one. And I'll be quiet because I know we're out of time.
So if I can quickly jump in there, Tash, is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, just to sort of like expand a bit on what Tash was saying there relating to muscular dystrophy. There were people experiencing muscular dystrophy that were involved in some studies, and some of those studies did suggest the importance of things like what we've already talked about in terms of time-based, considering time and considering how technology is modified to make movement easier with games technology. But it wasn't a huge focus, but it was certainly an important part of the research. So I think it'd be really great if we, as part of our projects going for this project and potential new projects going forward, if there was a way to talk more with people experiencing muscular dystrophy and similar conditions as a way to try and, build more of a gaming community inclusive to a lot of people in Australia who face these very difficult and experience these very difficult conditions.
Right. I think the information is probably out there. It's probably just not research or written or they're just probably doing it. And I just want to give Kirsten an opportunity if she has anything to say.
No, she doesn't at the moment. We can answer questions when given a little bit more time. But she's happy to be here and participating.
Okay. Well, I think we're at the end of our time then for this session. So we can say thank you to all of you. Thank you very much.